And welcome into the Upside Sports Network. My name is Michael. Appreciate you guys joining us on our MLB Hot Stove Daily Show. It's late on a Wednesday evening. I thought I would try to do a little bit later show tonight anyway to try to capture some of our West Coast viewers who might have been tuning in to the Lakers' loss anyway in the, I guess you'd call it the quarterfinals of the NBA Cup, and for our international viewers. Really do appreciate you guys sticking with us, as we got a little bit of a late start today. But Pete Alonso goes to the Baltimore Orioles. Kind of a surprise move there. Did not expect them to cash or to spend this much cash on a first base DH type of a player. Now, obviously, their offense hasn't been as good as it was in previous years. So I guess that's part of the impetus for them getting this deal done. There's also several rumors about them being involved in trade talks for Mackenzie Gore, Edward Cabrera, several other offensive pieces, and, oh, by the way, some top-flight free agent pitchers as well, such as Framber Valdez. That coming from John Paul Morosi anyway. That was a couple hours ago when he reported the latest on the Framber Valdez rumors there. So this is a very different Baltimore Orioles front office, at least so far this offseason. A little bit surprised at their willingness to spend so far. We'll see if they continue to spend. If this is where they stop, they spent it on the wrong thing. We knew going into this offseason they had to address that starting rotation, and they have yet to really address anything meaningful on that starting staff. So be sure to hit that like and subscribe, and let's get into the rest of Major League Baseball's top stories. Item number 2 has to begin with the Los Angeles Dodgers. Lots of trade talk around Teoscar Hernandez since the beginning of the winter meetings. Winter meetings are now finally over. Unfortunately, for what feels like the last 10 years now, it just hasn't been the same winter meetings that I remember that I grew up with. The great winter meetings in like 2011, I want to say, when we had Albert Pujols and all those other major contracts, big-time trades happen, left, right, center. When the winter meetings wasn't just 2.5 days long, it was a full 4 days. Now we don't even get that. It's 2.5 days, and pretty much everybody's just saying hello the first day. The final day, everybody's just kind of waiting around for the Rule 5 draft, and that's what today was. Everybody's back home, sleeping in their own beds, and it's just nowhere near what it used to be. But the second story behind Pete Alonso leaving the New York Mets and going to the Baltimore Orioles has to be the Los Angeles Dodgers, primarily because of Kyle Tucker. Kyle Tucker is probably the top guy on the free agent market this year. Obviously, he's going to get a a 9-figure deal from some team out there, over $100 million in change. Whether that's going to be over a 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year term remains to be seen. But here's another team entering the chat. If the Dodgers want a player, they're going to find a way to get him on their roster. I told you guys this last year that I'm not counting them out on anything. The rumblings out of LA are that they're in on Kyle Tucker. They will meet with him, it sounds like, after the winter meetings. So hopefully in the next week or so we could have some resolution in Kyle Tucker. But as far as the Dodgers are concerned, they're not looking to give him a mega deal of $400 million or something along those lines. They might give him some crazy amount for a 3 or 4 year deal with, of course, all kinds of deferrals packed in there. But if they were to pull off the top free agent signing once again, they just got the top free agent closer. Now they could possibly fill in their other big need, a corner outfield bat in Kyle Tucker. What an offseason it would already be for them. So let us know in the comment section what you guys think about the possibility of Kyle Tucker going to the Dodgers. I still think he's going to sign one of those mega deals in that $300+ million deal range. I think he is that type of a player who has earned the ability to choose where he wants to go, and I think he wants to go for top dollar right now. So I still think the Blue Jays make really good sense. The Yankees less so. Mets make a lot of sense. Nationals have all kinds of money they're looking to spend, but I doubt he goes back to Chicago or to Houston. But the Dodgers are certainly a team to keep in mind. I would guess they finish no worse than probably third or fourth in the running out of all these other teams. But maybe, just maybe, if they give him, say, $50 million a year, it's got to make you think if you're Kyle Tucker. 4 years, $50 million. Say it's $20 million per season deferred, so it's really more like $30 million. Obviously, that's significantly more than what Pete Alonso just got on an average annual basis. But that might be the type of contract terms it takes to get him to go to LA, as opposed to taking a mega deal, 10+ years, $300+ million, something along those lines. That is probably the numbers. It might be a little bit on the high side, but in the a lot more than $30 million is my point. With the deferrals on top of it, present day value might drop down to like $36-37 million. We already see starting pitchers go for well above that, and Kyle Tucker is certainly worthy of getting top dollar in this free agent class. But curious to see where he ultimately goes. Let's check in on our comments section right now. Vita for Life, welcome back. Sean, Harley, appreciate you guys joining us once again. Anthony, thank you guys for joining us this evening on a late Wednesday evening. Dodgers pursuing Tucker. OGs is right. If they did bring in Kyle Tucker, part of the the calculus here would probably be finding a suitor for Teoscar Hernandez. Not too many teams were calling on him so far this offseason. Now we have one. The Kansas City Royals might bail out the Dodgers of a little bit of money here by taking on Teoscar Hernandez. Don't actually mind this type of a thing for the Royals. It does give them a proven bat, middle of the order type of a hitter for them. Not exactly a huge cost for them because of the deferred money and because of the short-term deal that he's currently on. I think he's got 2 or 3 years left on that deal. That's a kind of deal that the Royals could easily stomach. So if they were to bring in a Kyle Tucker, or if they just want to go ahead and free up some space here, Teoscar Hernandez to the Royals would certainly be a good option in my eyes at least. Sean, will there be more action the rest of the week? Gosh, I hope so. Winter meetings was an absolute bust. It's nowhere near what it used to be. You think back, 15, 20 years ago to the days when Black Friday were, brick and mortar. You'd go in there and, go like crazy to try to get your, the best deal on that new TV or, just some new Tupperware containers or KitchenAid products or, whatever the case may be. Pots and pans, shirts, socks, DVDs, Xbox games, PS5, PS3, PS4 games, whichever generation that was. But that has kind of gone by the wayside, and now you do it online. Deals are basically not as good as they used to be, and you think of the way baseball has been affected very similarly. Winter meetings used to be something you had to be there for. The events just in the lobby, say 40 years ago, were incredible. You'd get GMs doing all kinds of crazy things back then. 20 years later, in the late 90s, early 2000s, you'd still have a great winter meetings, all kinds of really good deals, less of the shenanigans, but more actual deals would happen. Less crazy deals that don't make sense, more baseball trades, more big ticket signings, owners stepping in and saying, hey, I want this player on my team. Now you get to today's GM, and they're all thinking the same way. They don't need to be in contact with each other in person to be able to make these deals happen. There's no rush to get these deals done at the winter meetings because, hey, somebody else might sign them if they go visit another city. There is none of that right now. Pretty much the winter meetings right now is just an expo for Major League Baseball. The days of it mattering in terms of front office intrigue, the signings, the trades, I think that's gone by the wayside. I think it's strictly now an expo for Major League Baseball for smaller companies to showcase their wares, pitch tracking software, baseball, tracking, all those kinds of, baseball specific products. That's what it's really good for. That, the history of the game, the Hall of Fame announcement, that's about it. But as far as trades and free agent signings, I think we've gotten to the point where now, if you're like me, looking forward to the winter meetings every year for the trades, for the signings, it's just not going to happen as frequently as it used to. We still may get one or two really crazy things, like Pete Alonso going to the Orioles, but that's about it. And it's just a sad way for the winter meetings just kind of fizzle out. There are ways that I'm sure the CBA could look to kind of solve those issues. There are ways to incentivize teams to act quicker, maybe giving them some type of draft pick compensation, international bonus pool money for spending a little bit more, those kinds of things. And that might help out the Players Association because it'll alleviate their concerns about owners thinking alike and not spending on their players. So just another way to kind of think about the offseason and the winter meetings, how things could ultimately change. All right, let's try to catch up on a few of these comments here. Harley, I know JT Realmuto might go back to Philly. I wish the Rangers could get in on him. I think the Rangers are in on him. I don't think they're necessarily at the price that the Philadelphia Phillies will ultimately pay, and that's why I don't think it's necessarily very serious. I came up with a really interesting trade today. It's by no means a finished product, but let me just pop it up on the screen for you guys. Rangers, in case you guys are unfamiliar, are looking for a backup catcher, somebody to tag team with Higashioka. They're also looking for a fourth type of a starter to kind of fill in that rotation, lengthen it out a little bit. They would love to be able to get off with some money, but Corey Seager rumors, those were doused significantly today with Chris Young basically saying every single conversation has been initiated by other ball clubs about Corey Seager, and we have shot them all down before they got anywhere past the word go. So that tells me that Corey Seager is almost definitely staying with the Rangers this offseason. Could another team bowl them over with an offer? Absolutely. Just like any other team, if they offered every single, like the Dodgers, for instance, if they offered every single piece in their farm system, offered to, pay down the contract of Shohei Ohtani completely, trade Shohei back, go over to the Yankees for Aaron Judge, of course the Yankees would say, yes, sorry, Aaron could have been a lifetime Yankee, but I get the entire farm system of the Los Angeles Dodgers, and I get Shohei for free. Yeah, the Yankees would say yes to that in a heartbeat. But my point is, the Rangers aren't getting that kind of a godfather offer for Corey Seager. I don't think he's a distressed asset the way the Mavericks have with Anthony Davis. I think there was a lot of Dallas Metroplex media that was kind of pushing that narrative, and I think that's gone a little bit too far. Corey Seager's still a very effective player, a top 3 player at the position when healthy, and even when he isn't healthy, he's still in the top 5. You saw the defense last year. The bat still plays. He's basically the biggest force, the biggest catalyst for offense the Rangers have. And if they lose him, they aren't going to be contending. They aren't even going to be contending for a wild card. There are ways they could still stay competitive, but without Corey Seager, this offense would be quite anemic, just like it was last year. So I don't think Corey Seager is going to go anywhere this season. Now, once we get after this upcoming season, the lockout happens. We'll revisit the conversation at that point based off of how the 26th season ultimately goes. But I was telling you guys about the backup catcher situation, tag team situation with Higashioka anyway. Rangers are looking specifically at a couple of guys on the free agent market, but also on the trade market. The Miami Marlins have 3 catchers that they're thinking about utilizing this season. One is a top prospect, top 10 catching prospect in the game, Joe Mack. He's going to need some time at the big league level. Last year, the Miami Marlins had 2 catchers playing pretty much the majority of the time last year. And Liam Hicks is a little older, 27 years old. And the other one is Agustin Ramirez. And that's the one in this hypothetical trade that I have targeted. Let me pull this one up for you guys. Oh, I thought it'd go to the trade, but okay, there it goes. Okay. So the Rangers in this deal get their number 3-4 type starter in Edward Cabrera. They also get Agustin Ramirez. Marlins, for their trouble, they get Josh Young, take us over at third base. They now have cleaned up their catching situation. Now you're like, oh my, they're still giving up a heck of a couple of players there with Cabrera and Ramirez. The reason why they're doing it, Tyler Soderstrom. Now with Nick Kurtz taking over at first base and looking like a all-star top 5 hitter in all of baseball last year with the Athletics, I think he's only going to be an ascending player. Soderstrom is kind of a out of position type of a player. He's a first baseman playing in left field right now, and he needs to be moved out of there for the Athletics to really capitalize on the value here. Now, this is just, like I said, a very basic framework for a deal, but the Marlins get two offensive pieces, two pieces that still have multiple years left of control. If they can fix the issues with Josh Young, they could have an all-star on their hands. How likely do I think that happens? Slim. I think he's probably more of a role player on this team for the Miami Marlins. Soderstrom, though, his bat still plays. I think he could be an all-star year in and year out in the outfield or at first base for the Marlins. Now, of course, it's always contentious over there at first base, either the American League or National League. National League, you still have Freddie Freeman and Matt Olson to contend with, among others, at that first base spot for an all-star. But Soderstrom's offensive numbers certainly could hold up against some of those players. Now you're like, wait a minute, isn't Soderstrom on the A's? What's the final team? What is the return going to be for the A's for Soderstrom? Glad you asked. Sandy Alcantara. The A's are looking for some pitching this year. He's got 2 years left of control anyway for Alcantara going to the A's. This would basically be the bridge that gets them to Las Vegas. If Alcantara can become that Cy Young guy, obviously this would be a great trade for them. There's also a little bit of risk here. I say a little bit. There's a ton of risk here for the A's, which is why I don't think this is necessarily going to be the trade that gets the deal done. But this is the type of trade I could see happening between the Marlins and the Rangers. Maybe the A's could be substituted with another team that could come in and give another similar type of player to the Marlins. Meanwhile, the pitching goes the other way. But the A's in this deal get three different pitchers. Bradford, who didn't pitch last year because of injury, but has been a good young starting pitcher, has been very effective when he is healthy. Rosario, top 100 prospect, had Tommy John. He should be back probably around May to at least get back into the minor league side of things. Double A is probably where he would go for the A's. And then you're getting Alcantara, of course. All three of them have their red flags, which is why I don't think this is necessarily a great deal at all. But if you're looking at it from the Marlins' perspective, I think this would be an A+. This is way better of a return than what you'd ever expect to get for Alcantara, even if it was just straight up for Cabrera and Ramirez. I think that'd be a pretty good, pretty close return for those two pieces. And then, of course, Josh Young. I think the system is really overvaluing him right now. But hey, if that's what the world thinks of him, who am I to say no? All right, let's try to catch up on a few more of these comments here, and then try to get into the final few items of the day. Will there be more signings before Christmas? There will, Sean. Blue Jays will get Kyle Tucker, you think? I agree. I still think that's the most likely destination for him. Devin Williams' preferred destination was the Cubs. Interesting. I did see a lot of headlines with the fallout after Edwin Diaz yesterday and then Pete Alonso today that the Mets ultimately didn't get an offer on the table to Pete Alonso. Basically, the price got too high for what they were comfortable doing, and so be it. He's a first base DH guy. They were only comfortable going to 2 or 3 years. Once it got out of that range and clear that he was going to get a significant offer from another team, they just basically, wiped their hands of the situation and said, all right, there's plenty of first base infield options that we can utilize instead. There's specifically one down in Houston, and Christian Walker, I think, has a good chance to end up on the Mets if they don't bring in Cody Bellinger. That brings me to the New York Yankees. Yankees have kind of been twiddling their thumbs so far this offseason. Not something New York Yankees fans want to hear. We saw the issues last year after Soto left. They tried to build the team around kind of a hodgepodge of different pieces to kind of fill holes all over the team. Thinking the sum of the parts will equal a better team than with one aircraft carrier player in Juan Soto. Mixed bag, I guess, is the best way to describe how this past season went. Garrett Cole going down obviously didn't help. Same thing with Luis Gil, injury to Stanton, and so forth. But this wasn't necessarily a great year for them. There's always been rumblings about whether or not Aaron Boone's job is safe. But the point remains is that this offseason has been very quiet so far for the Yankees. You look at their top options on the market. Some of them are even their own players, like a Cody Bellinger. You look at the New York Mets. They love to steal players from the New York Yankees. You look at Luke Weaver, who's still out there. The guy that they just signed, Devin Williams, just signed on that New York Mets roster. I would not be surprised to see them go after both Luke Weaver and Cody Bellinger to fill holes in that bullpen with the departure of Diaz and in that starting lineup with Pete Alonso now going to the Orioles. Bellinger would fit in very nicely over there at first base. Those aren't the only options, though, for the Mets. Obviously, they can go after a Kyle Tucker. Murakami seems to be a guy they have been targeting for the better part of the last 2 seasons. We'll see if they get that done. Okamoto is also on the free agent market as well. Less power, but seen as a more well-rounded player, better defender as well. And with the addition of Marcus Semien, maybe that's the route they decide to go with, a guy with a little bit better defensive glove, if you will. So we'll see where this thing goes for the Mets. Mets fans are not happy. Yankees fans are not happy. Something needs to go in there to break their way here soon. Otherwise, we could see fans really start to turn on those two ball clubs rather quickly. A lot of the fan favorites are now gone for the Mets. Saw several different podcasts out there discussing Nimmo is now gone. Edwin Diaz, one of the few guys in that locker room who was positive, is gone. And now you got Pete Alonso, Mr. Met, leaving to go to the Baltimore Orioles because you weren't willing to go to 5 years. Whether you were right or wrong, a lot of the fan favorites are now gone. So it's going to be completely on David Stearns to be able to get this thing on the right path. And oh, by the way, we still don't have a free agent starting pitcher signing there or a trade for a top-end starting pitcher either. He's got a lot of work to do. He's got some time to get this stuff done, but, got to hope that this team starts to take the pitching seriously and starts to solve some of the issues that they have ongoing with the departures from that lineup. Let's keep it going here. I'm Heel. Welcome back. Appreciate you joining us. B. Rich, thank you for joining us as well. I think the rumors of Teoscar being shopped, Tucker could be the Dodger. With the rumors of Teoscar being shopped, Tucker could be a Dodger. That's kind of my worry right now as a fan of Major League Baseball. I really don't want to see us go to a lockout. Those strikes, lockouts have irreparable damage that can be done to the league. We've seen it time and time again. And I believe if we get a Kyle Tucker signing, there is nothing that will stop owners from advocating for a salary cap. The vote might end up being, 29-1 in favor of advocating for a salary cap. If that does happen, we will get a lockout and we will miss baseball for the majority of the 27 season, if not the entirety of the 27 season. Players will never agree to a salary cap. Now, say we miss the entire season of baseball because of the salary cap issue in 27. I'm just wondering if players start to budge, say, winter meetings time after the 27th season. Do they decide, hey, we haven't had baseball in a year, we need paychecks, how long can we really hold out? And at that point, do they start to open their minds to the idea of a salary cap? But again, that would be a full 365-day lockout plus before we even get to that point. I just really hope it doesn't come that far. But with Kyle Tucker on the market right now, if the Dodgers get him, I just don't see how the other ball clubs don't try to advocate for a salary cap. I don't believe in it. I don't think they should do it. I think there's a million other ways that they could try to solve it. But we all know how rich owners decide to think. If things aren't in my favor, then it ain't fair for anybody, and I'm going to put my foot down until I get my way. That's just how owners work. Players, meanwhile, don't necessarily have the big mega bucks that these owners do, so they're going to be feeling the pain of that lockout a little bit more at one point or another. The question is, how long can they hold out for, and will they be able to find some middle ground to keep us from getting to that lockout phase? I find it very hard to believe, and if Kyle Tucker does go to the Los Angeles Dodgers, I would almost guarantee that the lockout will happen. I'm pretty close to that already, but I think that would absolutely be the final nail in the coffin if there isn't already one in it. All right, let's keep this thing going here. Deferred should go to dollar for dollar against the threshold period. Couldn't agree with you more. That's one way I think they will solve, or one hole they will resolve in the CBA is all this deferred money. I don't think they'll necessarily close the loophole entirely because there are ongoing contracts with deferred money, and it's not just the Dodgers that are utilizing it. A lot of teams utilize the deferred money for one reason or another. I think they might put a cap on the number of dollars that you can defer, but I don't think it'll be gone completely. B-Rich Dodgers going to be history year Yankees is sickening and deferred being allowed to not count in current year is laughable. I would agree on that second one, but as far as the Yankees of yesteryear, the steroid years and so forth, Yankees were still a dynasty when all of baseball was doing one thing or another. I'm not going to fault any player for using steroids during that era. I'm not going to hold it against them. I'm not going to keep them out of the hall. Whether you believe, that's the right thing morally or not, the point is that it wasn't just one or two players. There was players in the minors that were juicing to get to the next level of the minors. Players who would have been AAA players who got into the big leagues because they were juicing. Pitchers were doing it. Hitters were doing it. The point is, you have no idea who was and who was not. So during that period of time when steroids were so prevalent in Major League Baseball, I'm just going to put a plaque in front of that era that says, hey, during this period of time, Major League Baseball did not do enough to try to keep the steroid and performance-enhancing drug issue out of Major League Baseball. Therefore, keep all of that in mind when you look at the irreparable damage that was done to the numbers of Major League Baseball. The most sacred thing in Major League Baseball was the numbers up until that point, and the steroid era completely threw that in the garbage can. Now, once you have that plaque out there, everybody can kind of understand that during this period of time, some players were able to succeed more than others, may or may not have been as a result of steroids. It is not for us to judge. They did what they could to try to get ahead. Do I think that they were right for doing it? No, but I'm not going to hold it against them because several other people were doing it as well. Again, you guys know my stance on this. I'm tired of talking about Barry Bonds. Tired of talking about Roger Clemens. How many times do we have to tell everybody that this is probably one of the top 3 hitters we've ever seen in Major League Baseball history with or without steroids in Barry Bonds, and yet we're not going to have him in the Hall of Fame? Foul Territory did a great job of describing this with A.J. Pierzynski and Eric Kratz, really kind of putting the player's touch on it, how this was a problem in the game at that period of time. And for us to not recognize that it wasn't just a Barry Bonds issue, it was a Major League Baseball issue, that the commissioner of Major League Baseball is in the Hall of Fame, who was overseeing this entire period of Major League Baseball. There are players in the Hall right now that may or may not have already used PEDs from that era, and yet we're going to single out a couple of players because we think we may or may not know that they did or did not use steroids. I think it's just a little bit of Mickey Mouse, when it comes to those kinds of things. And I'm tired of talking about them. It's time for other players to get their due. They should have been in years ago, because then those votes that they got in this round of voting from with the contemporary, I believe, the contemporary era committee ballot could have gone to a Dale Murphy. Dale Murphy could be in the Hall of Fame right now. McGriff could have gotten in sooner. Jeff Kent could have gotten in sooner, because these guys would have been off the ballot in the Hall of Fame and done. We look at the center fielders of the past 10, 15 years. The Andrew Joneses of the world, the Kenny Loftons, the Bernie Williams, the Jim Edmonds that never really got a real chance to get into the Hall of Fame because some of them were off the ballot within the first year. And why was that? Because players were having to be kept on people's ballots for years and years and years, like Barry Bonds, like Roger Clemens, and all these other PED guys or PED era guys that ultimately kept getting 33% of the vote, but never really anything higher. That 33% could have gone to some of those other players to get them to stay on the ballot and really get them to gain momentum and finally get in, a la a Tim Raines, a la an Edgar Martinez. And those players now will have to go through those committees, and hopefully they get on them. But yet, those committees are now polluted with that same problem. Let's see if they can solve it. But as far as the Yankees back in the day, I think Major League Baseball right now is actually going to benefit from having an evil empire, much like the Yankees in the late 90s, early 2000s, because it's so hard to keep the public's attention. I completely agree with Colin Cowherd on this when he was discussing Major League Baseball today on his radio show, how you really need to capture, the fans' attention, even in the offseason, at some point or another. And the Dodgers just being the absolute bad guy, the evil empire, getting everybody that they want, being perceived as the one team that's, the evil empire, if you will, but also still creating a dynasty, still winning and doing it within the confines of the game, and not just some extra rule that they're taking advantage of that no other team can. The Dodgers they're working under the same rules that every other team is, and yet they're the ones that have won 2 straight World Series. They're the ones who are able to get Shohei Ohtani and work their payroll this way. Absolutely, they benefit from having the LA market, being on the West Coast, having the deep pockets that they have. Some other teams have similar types of advantages. Some teams have other disadvantages. But the Dodgers certainly being good, being competitive, winning demonstrably, being the easy favorite ahead of everybody else in Major League Baseball, certainly gives Major League Baseball that evil empire they've been looking for since the late 90s in the New York Yankees. That keeps them in front of mind of Major League Baseball fans. That has helped increase local revenue numbers for a lot of different teams and local media markets, because of the Dodger games register such a higher number in those markets. It's helping save baseball in a lot of different ways. Not saying that it needed complete saving, but it doesn't hurt to have an evil empire for all these other teams to hate. You think back to the 2011 Heatles. You think back to the Golden State Warriors when they got Kevin Durant, the Brady Patriots, the Patrick Mahomes Chiefs. Baseball, basketball, football, all these sports benefit from having an evil empire type of a team, and right now the Dodgers' turn is now. All right, let's keep this thing rolling here a little bit. Got a lot of comments trying to catch up to. Mets losing Alonso to the Orioles is like a rich man losing a sale to the middle class man because he was smart with his coupons. I don't think necessarily the Orioles went cheap here or that the Mets went cheap. I think the Mets decided that 2 or 3 years was about their max for Pete Alonso. Same thing last year. That's what ultimately happened for Pete Alonso. He couldn't get that multi-year offer or wasn't comfortable taking that multi-year offer from another team at that time. He wanted to retire a Met. So he thought he'd give it one more try. If he had a horrible year, he would have opted into his deal, stayed there for 2 more seasons. If he did have a great year or a good year like he just had, he would opt out, try to go into free agency once again, see if the Mets would give him the long-term deal that he was looking for, and if they didn't, then he'd probably be more open to leaving and going elsewhere. And that ultimately is what happened here. Mets stuck to their guns. They're a first base DH guy. You're not going to age well through the life of that contract. We talked about that a lot with Kyle Schwarber yesterday. And now I think we're in a similar boat here with Pete Alonso. They needed to upgrade their offense. The Orioles were always known as an offensive ball club, as the Adley Rutschman, Gunnar Henderson, and this group has kind of come through the ranks. This offense was supposed to be very good. Last year, it was by and large not good for the first 4 months of the season. August and September, things started to turn around a little bit, but I think the struggles that offense had was the impetus for them bringing in Pete Alonso. Now, of course, their biggest issue has been and will remain to be that starting staff. That's where they really need to solve it right now. Will the Cubs do something? Eric, welcome in. Appreciate you joining us. Cubs are going to do a few different things. I imagine they're probably going to be looking at least 2 starting pitchers, probably on short-term deals. Longest term, I think they'll probably do on a starting pitcher is maybe like a Michael King, 4 for $80. But I think more likely they'll go for the 1 or 2 year options. Guys like Tyler Mahle, players along those lines. But they're also looking at third base. Alex Bregman is said to be their top target. They will wait until the very end of that free agency for Alex Bregman. If they don't get Alex Bregman, the rest of the guys that are on the free agent market at third base might ultimately pass them by and might sign even before Bregman. Looking at specifically Eugenio Suarez, they have registered interest in him. They have met with Eugenio Suarez as well. But again, they're going to wait for Alex Bregman and see if they can steal him away from the Boston Red Sox. They need some time frame more similar to the NBA. As awful as the NBA is generally, they and the NFL get more right to condense their transactions. I do like how the NHL, the NBA really kind of, and the NFL really kind of, when the bell opens for signings to happen on July 1st, in the NHL after the season is over, you get almost every single signing within the first day. There might be 4 or 5 more days where you get a couple more trickling in, but by and large, everybody wants to leave and go enjoy their summer. All those transactions are pretty much done within a week. Then you get the trade talk, a couple of small deals, as you get up closer to the start of the season. But by and large, almost every single bit of business is done in the first couple of days of the free agency in the NHL. Same thing in the NBA. The moratorium. How many times have we seen players agree to deals before they can actually sign on the dotted line, and then everybody signs right as the bell opens when that moratorium is over? And they've kind of shortened that moratorium period now to where it's not quite as long, but almost all the deals happen very, very quickly. The NFL, same kind of thing in March. Whenever that the bell opens, that's when we get a whole bunch of deals done, usually within the first couple of days. They have the NFL free agency frenzy on on the NFL Network, and lasts for about 2 or 3 days. The majority of the deals are done. There might be a few guys that last for a couple more weeks, but that's by and large what happens. Major League Baseball, meanwhile, they like to try to keep their attention throughout the entire offseason. At least that's their thought process behind the way they do it. Not saying it's right or wrong, but I am saying that the way that the NFL, the way that the NBA, the way that the NHL do these kinds of things, it seems to generate more interest for a shorter, compact period of time. And I get Major League Baseball is not trying to lose their entire market share over the course of the winter to football and basketball and then have to reclaim it again in March and September when opening day rolls around. But I think if you have a big calendar event in the fall or in the winter, like the winter meetings used to be, you keep yourself in the front page for a couple of days there. You're not in the front page unless something absolutely major, crazy happens when these deals just matriculate out. One deal, one deal, one deal. I doubt the only market that we see, any type of, front page or even in the top half of the fold of the sports section reference to Major League Baseball would be in New York for the deal that they lost in Pete Alonso. I think that's about it. Maybe even on the back page of the New York Times or something. That might be the only time you see baseball right now on the front page, like the way baseball tried to be for years and years. And I think if they just found a way to incentivize teams to utilize the winter meetings the way they were, lengthen them back out to a full 4 days, let the Friday morning be the Rule 5 draft, and be done with it, I think they'd be much better served and have more interest in the game in the offseason than just doing it the way they do it, which I still believe is wrong, where they spread it all out, where anytime you could get these signings, and you have all this talk about rumors and so forth. That can only get you so far in the mainstream media. Otherwise, you're left with channels like this one, where you go to YouTube and you talk about, who might sign where, trade possibilities like are on my screen. Where else are you going to find talk about Tyler Soderstrom possibly being moved to Miami Marlins? It's certainly ain't gonna be on any of your major networks out there. So whether or not that's right or wrong, I just believe that Major League Baseball would be benefited more by a more concentrated effort to get those deals done in a smaller time frame. All right, Harley, Nimmo is going to love Seager. Absolutely, I think those guys will get along very well. Seager should definitely be traded while he's still prior to his 10-5. Kind of agree there. While his health is not entirely a no-fly zone, also kind of agree. I just think that the Rangers view him as their one key piece in their lineup that they cannot really do without. I think they were hoping some team would bowl them over at the winter meetings. It did not happen. And so I think there was a bunch of teams that registered interest. I know that at least the Red Sox, I know that the Braves and the Yankees all at least had touched base on Corey Seager. I did not hear the Dodgers if they had touched base or not. But no team really presented any offer to the Rangers at all. They just merely approached them about the idea of moving on from Corey Seager in the way that the Mavericks are looking to move on from Anthony Davis. Contractually, seeing what they could get for him before he's no longer of any value. Seager's not in that boat, and the Rangers were less than impressed at the way teams approached them in the effort to bring him in. So I think the Rangers are very happy with the player. I think he's still a top 3 shortstop in the game when healthy. I think he's a top 5 shortstop even with the health issues. And we'll see if the Rangers ultimately get that continued great performance out of him. If he does get that 10-5, I don't think that would necessarily preclude them from getting a deal done. For if the Rangers have another terrible season, I think Corey Seager might look for another destination because he wants to be on a winning ball club. And if the Rangers are looking to save money next offseason, again, lockout, all that kind of coming all at that same time, if they can find a way to offload his deal and get something of return at that point, I think that Seager would be very amenable to going into a contending situation if that doesn't work out for the Rangers this season. The Mets want Contreras from the St. Louis Cardinals. Would he be a good option for them? There has been some talk about them internally discussing Jeff McNeil and possibly Paul Goldschmidt, again, former Yankee, tandem over there at first base. I like that idea a whole lot more than I do Contreras. While Contreras does have the ability to catch, he's not a plus catcher anymore. He's a first baseman. He's an okay first baseman at this point, and I'd rather go with the platoon of McNeil and Goldschmidt if I had the option between those two. Jay Palmer, welcome in. Is it crazy to think that the O's could go for Tucker and trade for a pitcher? Crazy for Tucker? Yes. Trade for a pitcher? No. Mackenzie Gore, again, I still doubt that he ultimately gets moved. I think the Nationals will spend this offseason. I think that will quiet down the Mackenzie Gore talk when that does happen. Again, still think C.J. Abrams would be the more likely one to go if a deal does get done with some of these top-flight free agents. Gore, on the other hand, I think they would need to keep that starting staff together and see if they could build something with their free agent that they signed and Mackenzie Gore still on the team. However, I still think that they need to go after some starting pitching like a Framber Valdez. A little bit surprised that they paid the price that they did for Pete Alonso and are still talking to Framber Valdez, but they're also in there for several other starting pitchers on the trade front, Cabrera, Ryan, among others, to help fill their needs in that starting staff. Be Rich, heck yes. Anything to rid the Rangers of Young, and I'm a big fan of his. I love Josh Young as well. I just think that they need to do a little bit better at third base. If he's the answer, great. but I'm not willing to give him carte blanche to get a whole nother year of 162 games over there at third base. If things aren't working out by late May, he might very well lose his everyday spot to a Cody Freeman. Mr. Wind, what's the best scenario for the Cubs this offseason? Best scenario is Alex Bregman decides, hey, I want to go play in Chicago, and they do get a deal done with Michael King, and then add another short-term piece. Are they going to get all that done? I doubt it. I think they're probably going to end up with 2 short-term pieces, and more likely Eugenio Suarez. Is Soderstrom the giant kid who had 40 home runs and 125 RBIs in one game against the Astros? No, that was Nick Kurtz. That's why I think Soderstrom would become available. Ian Happ trade rumors, I think there's a chance he's moved. I think there's a chance, but there's so many second basemen on the market right now. I think that market's got to settle itself. Ian Happ, I think, is still a good left-handed hitting option, but I think Brendan Lau is where that market is right now, and it sounds like the Pittsburgh Pirates might be closest on that one. Once he goes, I think there would be a few more teams open to the idea of Ian Happ. Not necessarily that he's going to be playing second base, but that there are other options that are on the market right now for a DH, a guy like Brendan Lau who still can flex out to the outfield in certain situations, but I think his best position obviously is still second base. Meanwhile, for Ian Happ, I still think he'd be a great offensive piece for a lot of different teams out there. The question is, what kind of price would he command on the open market? Does Byron Buxton eventually get on the market as well? Lots of things to think about, because that market for center fielders or outfielders in general is not nearly as far along as the second base market on the trade front. Let's see here. Try to catch up on a few of these others. Jeffrey, ain't no way Seager's getting traded. He's our best player. I still would be comfortable trading Seager if I got bowled over by a package. Obviously, that package never came, so he will be a member of the Rangers on opening day. Sorry you misunderstood my steroid reference was saying the Dodgers outspending like the old Yankees. Yeah, that's kind of what I was referring to as well, how both teams were both the evil empire. Both teams were spending above pretty much what anybody else is at that time for the Yankees, or now for the Dodgers. I'm heel. Sports are like the WWE when you don't have a good heel at the moment. What are you going to do? Just create a new one in case the Dodgers, Astros, are sort of the Yankees. True. I mean, that's when sports are best. Again, the Heatles for basketball, the Warriors in the, 16, 17, 18 range, Astros in the late 2010s, Dodgers right now, Yankees in the late 90s, early 2000s, the Patriots with Tom Brady pretty much his entire career, Patrick Mahomes for basically the last 4 years. When you have an evil empire where other fan bases of the other 29 teams can all root against, that's when your ratings really go up, because they're invested in that team now. Whether they want them to win or lose, they're still going to spend their money to watch that team win or lose. Interest is high. Getting people to be around the game, buy the jersey, look up the information about the game, partners of the game, advertising for the game, revenue for ticket sales, advertising revenue at the stadium. All those kinds of things are benefited by having an evil empire type of a team. Local media markets who get to broadcast the Dodger game when they come to face the Miami Marlins. Those numbers go way through the roof. The Texas Rangers, they tried their first year of having their own independent streaming platform with Victory Plus. First year was not profitable for them. So we'll see if that happens this year. I think that the promotion that they did, giving away 2 free tickets to the game, had something to do with it in the beginning. I think they'll probably have to jack up their price just a little bit more. They kept tinkering with the product all year long. I wasn't a fan of that. I think there was a way that they could have done so without using so many guest appearances, but there are ways that they could have still made their money. But back to the original point, when you have a big evil empire team like the Dodgers coming into town, even against the Texas Rangers, numbers do spike for those games. All right. Really do hope that you guys enjoyed the video today. We're going to be talking quite a bit over the next couple of days about a couple of different free agents that are out there and where they could ultimately land. Since the winter meetings was basically a dud this year, we're going to try to see if we can play matchmaker with a lot of these free agents. So feel free to send your comments to us. Let us know which players you think should go where, how much you think they'll sign for, what trades you're actually looking forward to seeing completed. I think Brendan Lau is very close. I think Cabrera probably gets done in the next couple of weeks before Christmas. I think there's several trades that have been talked about basically since the November GM meetings and again at the winter meetings. We'll see if we finally get some of those deals. I'm absolutely shocked that we didn't get any type of a big trade at the winter meetings this year. I think this is the first year that's really happened. When I say big, I'm even talking like moderate, like a bullpen arm getting traded to another team, something along that line. And we didn't really even get that this year. We got the Rule 5 draft and a couple of interesting selections today, but that's basically it. Your big signings were Kyle Schwarber going back to Philadelphia, Edwin Diaz going to the Dodgers, Pete Alonso going to the Orioles. You did get a couple of signings before the winter meetings, obviously, so I think that did have a little bit of an effect as well. Lindor to the Padres, really? I didn't see anything about that one, but let me just double check and see if anything has happened. We did get the Mike Yastrzemski deal with the Braves, 2 years, $23 million, $9 million the first year. I believe the rest in the second there. There's the Rockies news. Several teams talking about Freddie Peralta, but again, I still don't think he's going anywhere. Nothing there. Well, I'll put it this way. If the Padres were interested in Francisco Lindor, what do they already have on their roster? Shortstops. Manny Machado used to be a shortstop, obviously more of a third baseman now. Xander Bogaerts. They tried playing him at other positions. When they had Kim and Profar playing shortstop for them, they put Bogaerts over there at second and thought that would work out. Obviously, he suffered immensely by doing so. So they put Bogaerts over there at shortstop again this year. He played a little bit better. I'm guessing they're hoping for better even next year, so we'll see. Could they improve over Bogaerts? Absolutely, but when you look at the money that's invested in both of those players, just absolutely obscene money. And, oh, by the way, they still have their own former shortstop in-house anyway, in Fernando Tatis Jr. as well. So, interesting. Xander and Miller for Lindor. If I'm the Mets, I'd probably say no. If I'm the Padres, do I say no as well? No, I would probably do that just to offload the money of Xander Bogaerts. You get the upgrade of Lindor. I think he and Tatis would get along quite well, like brothers. Losing Mason Miller would certainly hurt to their bullpen after they just lost Suarez in free agency. I think he's going to sign with a different ball club. I don't think he goes back to San Diego, but we shall see. Alrighty, appreciate you guys joining us. Be sure to join us again tomorrow. We will start a little bit later again tomorrow as well to try to get some more of our West Coast people to join us again. We'll probably start around 10 o'clock as well, so be sure to hit that like and subscribe. We'll put a video out tomorrow about Pete Alonso as well, so if you guys want to check that one out, we'll have some reaction, some fallout to it, what happens next for the Orioles, what's next for the Mets, is this the new normal for the Mets? Those kinds of questions will all be answered in that video, so be sure to tune in. Then we may even do an afternoon live as well if there's something big that happens. So be sure to hit that like and subscribe. We'll see you guys again tomorrow evening. Take care, everybody, and stay safe out there.